The massive ship emerged silently from the depths of space, its dark metal hull gleaming against the backdrop of stars. Earth's blue sphere hung below, peaceful and unaware of the changes about to unfold. Inside the ship's command center, Ambassador Kang Tae-il watched the view with barely hidden disdain. Tae-il's iridescent scales shifted colors as he moved, a trait his species considered a mark of superiority. His long fingers tapped impatiently on the polished surface of his command console, while his vertical pupils narrowed at the sight of Earth's primitive satellites. "Pathetic," he muttered, noting how the human devices struggled to even detect their presence. The ship's cloaking technology made them practically invisible to Earth's current level of technology. Or so he thought. "Ambassador, we're receiving a signal," his communications officer reported, surprise evident in his voice. It's coming from the planet's surface. They've detected us." Tae-il's scales flashed a brief purple of annoyance. This wasn't part of the plan. Developing worlds weren't supposed to detect their ships until they chose to reveal themselves. It was all part of the carefully choreographed first contact protocol the Zentari had perfected over thousands of years. "Put it on screen," he ordered, straightening his ceremonial robes. The Zentari had done this hundreds of times before. Usually, primitive species would either cower in fear or attempt useless shows of aggression. Both reactions suited the Zentari's purposes perfectly. The screen flickered to life, and Tae-il found himself face to face with Dr. Park Ji-won. The human woman sat calmly at what appeared to be a modern command center, her expression professional and composed. Behind her, screens displayed detailed readings of the Zentari ship, including several specifications that should have been impossible for humans to detect. "Greetings, visitors," Dr. Park spoke in perfect galactic standard, another impossibility that made Tae-il's scales ripple with unease. "On behalf of Earth's United Council, I welcome you to our system." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't how first contact usually went. Primitive species weren't supposed to know galactic standard, let alone have the technology to detect their ships or analyze their capabilities. "I am Ambassador Kang Tae-il of the Zentari Empire," he responded, forcing his voice to remain steady. "We are the first empire, bringers of civilization to the galaxy. We have come to offer your world the privilege of joining our enlightened rule." Dr. Park's slight smile never wavered. "How interesting, Ambassador. We've been quite eager to meet you. Perhaps you'd be interested in seeing some of our recent technological achievements. We've made particular advances in quantum mechanics and dark matter manipulation." Tae-il's scales shifted to a pale green of worry. Dark matter manipulation. That technology was supposed to be exclusive to the Zentari. How could these humans have developed it independently? "As the first empire," he began, falling back on his usual script, "we have guided countless species into the galactic community. Our civilization has stood for 50,000 years. 50,000 years. Dr. Park interrupted politely. "That's quite impressive. Though I notice your ship uses a rather outdated form of hyperspace drive. We've found some interesting ways to improve efficiency in that area." The ambassador's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. This was all wrong. Humans were supposed to be primitive, easily awed by Zentari technology. Instead, this Dr. Park spoke as if discussing matters with an equal, or perhaps even an inferior. "We have carefully documented records of being the first spacefaring race," Tae-il insisted, his voice rising slightly. "No other civilization has achieved what we have." "Records can be such interesting things, can't they?" Dr. Park replied, her smile taking on a knowing edge. "We've been doing quite a bit of research ourselves lately. Perhaps while you're here, we could compare notes about galactic history." Tae-il felt a cold sensation creeping down his spine. There was something in her tone, something that hinted at knowledge that humans shouldn't possess. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he found himself completely off balance. That is," he stammered before recovering somewhat. "We will need to discuss the terms of your world's integration into our empire." "Of course," Dr. Park nodded. Though I suspect those discussions may not go quite the way you're expecting, Ambassador. Shall we arrange a proper meeting? We have some findings that I believe will be of great interest to the Zentari Empire. As the transmission ended, Tail stood frozen on his bridge, his scales cycling through colors of confusion and concern. The humans knew too much, understood too much. And that final comment about findings, why did it fill him with such inexplicable dread? His first officer approached cautiously. Ambassador, should we proceed with the standard protocol? Tail stared at the blue planet below, no longer seeing a primitive world ripe for absorption into the Empire, but something far more unsettling, a mystery that threatened everything the Zentari had claimed to be. No, he said finally. Contact the High Council. Tell them we may have a situation. The red dust swirled around Dr. Kim Sun-mi's boots as she carefully brushed away centuries of sediment from the metallic surface. The twin suns of XO227 beat down mercilessly, but she barely noticed the heat anymore. After 3 weeks of excavation, her team had uncovered something that defied explanation. The mining survey was supposed to be routine. The planet, marked as uninhabited and resource-rich, had been slated for mineral extraction. But when Sun-mi's initial scans detected unusual metal deposits arranged in geometric patterns, everything changed. She ran her gloved hand over the freshly exposed surface, feeling the precise angles and smooth finish that could only be the product of intelligent design. The wall stretched at least 50 meters in both directions before disappearing into the red soil, and her instruments suggested it continued much deeper. Another section cleared. Dr. Kim called one of her assistants, waving from several meters away. Sun-mi nodded and made her way over, each step careful in the lower gravity. The newly exposed area revealed more of the strange symbols that had first caught her attention. The markings were unmistakable, identical to those found in the oldest cave paintings on Earth. But that was impossible. These ruins were dated to over 200,000 years ago, long before humans were supposed to have developed even basic tools, let alone space travel. Sun-mi reached for her communicator. Director Lee, you need to see this immediately. Her voice trembled slightly despite her best efforts to remain professional. Lee Do-hyun arrived within minutes, his environment suit whirring softly as he moved. The director's usually stern expression melted into one of wonder as he took in the exposed wall section. Are these readings accurate? He asked, checking his own instruments. The dating can't be right. I've run the tests 3 times, Sun-mi confirmed. Different methods, same results. And there's more. She led him to a partially excavated doorway. The metal itself. It's an alloy we've never seen before, but its molecular structure suggests it was designed to last for millennia. They stepped through the doorway into what appeared to be a vast chamber. Their helmet lights revealed rows of empty pedestals and wall-mounted fixtures that might once have held technology beyond their understanding. Look at the scale of this place, Do-hyun breathed. This wasn't just a settlement. This was a city, Sun-mi finished, or maybe something even bigger. And these markings, they're not just similar to Earth's ancient cave paintings. They're exactly the same, down to the smallest detail. A loud crack echoed through the chamber as one of the research teams broke through another wall section. Excited voices called them over. Sun-mi and Do-hyun hurried to the new opening, where their lights revealed something that made them both freeze. There, perfectly preserved in the airless environment, stood a massive mural. It depicted figures that were unmistakably human, standing among the stars. They wore suits that bore little resemblance to modern space gear, but served the same obvious purpose. And they were building, creating structures that looked exactly like the ruins they now stood in. This changes everything, Do-hyun said quietly. Every history book, every assumption about human development. Sun-mi was already taking samples and readings. The Zentari won't like this, she said. Their whole empire is built on being the first spacefaring race. The Zentary's claims go back 50,000 years, Du Hyun replied. This is 4 times older than that. But why didn't we know? How did we forget? Something caught Sun Na's eye near the bottom of the mural. She crouched down, brushing away more dust to reveal another set of symbols. These were different. They looked like some kind of warning. Director, she called, I think I found something about what happened to them. To us. She began translating the ancient script, her eyes growing wider with each symbol. It talks about a great disaster, a war, something that forced them to abandon everything and retreat. Retreat where? Du Hyun asked, though they both already suspected the answer. To Earth, Sun Mai whispered. They went back to Earth and started over. We're not just looking at our ancestors, Director. We're looking at ourselves. We had all this and we lost it. Or maybe it was taken from us. Du Hyun finished grimly. Keep working. Document everything. But don't transmit any of this back to Central Command yet. Something tells me we need to be very careful about how we release this information. As they continued their examination, neither noticed the small drone hovering outside the ruins, transmitting everything back to a hidden Centauri observation post. In his private chambers, Ambassador Kang Tae-il watched the feed with growing horror. The humans were discovering too much, too quickly. The High Council would need to be informed immediately. The truth they had buried for so long was about to come to light. The portable lab unit hummed softly as Dr. Yoon Hae carefully placed another sample into the analyzer. Around her, the excavation site had grown into a sprawling complex of research stations and temporary shelters. The red dust of XO227 covered everything, but beneath it lay treasures that were rewriting human history. She watched the DNA sequencer work its magic on the latest tissue sample, preserved perfectly in the sealed chambers they'd discovered. The previous 15 samples had all shown the same remarkable results, but she needed to be absolutely certain before making her final report. Another match, she murmured, comparing the results to modern human DNA profiles. The similarities were beyond any possibility of coincidence. These weren't just humanoid remains, they were human remains, dating back 200,000 years. Choi Min-ho entered the lab, carrying a strange device they'd recovered from the deeper chambers. You need to see this, Hayan, he said, setting it carefully on the workbench. We finally got it to power up. The device hummed to life, projecting a holographic display that filled the lab with moving images. They watched in stunned silence as it showed detailed star maps, technological schematics, and most surprisingly, recordings of people who looked exactly like modern humans. They're speaking in an ancient language, Min-ho noted, but look at their technology. Those ships, they're more advanced than anything we have now, more advanced than even the Centauri. Hayan nodded, her eyes fixed on the display. The DNA analysis is conclusive, she told him, pointing to her results. These were our ancestors, and their technological capabilities far exceeded our current understanding. We're not just looking at our past, Min-ho. We're looking at what we lost. The lab door burst open as one of their security officers rushed in. We've got company, he announced. 3 Centauri ships just entered orbit. They're demanding we shut down the site immediately. Through the lab's window, they could see Ambassador Kang's shuttle descending toward their landing pad, kicking up clouds of red dust. His arrival was no surprise. They'd been expecting Centauri interference since the first evidence emerged. Back up everything, Hayan ordered, quickly copying data to secure drives. Send copies to every major research center on Earth. They can't bury this again. The ambassador stormed into the lab minutes later, his scales flickering between colors of anger and fear. This site is now closed, he declared. We have detected dangerous radiation levels. Everyone must evacuate immediately. Hayan stood her ground. Our instruments show no radiation, Ambassador. And I think we both know why you're really here. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Kang hissed. Some things are better left buried, like the truth about how the Zentari rose to power. Minho asked quietly. We found the weapons storage facilities. We know what happened here. The ambassador's scales turned pale. You have no proof. We have everything, Hayan replied, holding up a data crystal. Every artifact, every recording, every piece of evidence showing that humans achieved spaceflight long before the Zentari existed. The only question is, what did you do to us? Kang's composure cracked. Your ancestors were dangerous, uncontrollable. They would have dominated the galaxy. We had no choice. You destroyed them, Minho realized. Forced them back to Earth, bombed them back to the Stone Age. It was necessary, Kang insisted. We brought order to the galaxy. You built your empire on our ruins, Hayan finished. But you didn't finish the job, did you? Some of our knowledge survived, buried in our genes, in our oldest stories. That's why we've advanced so quickly since rediscovering spaceflight. The ambassador's hand moved toward what might have been a weapon, but security officers were already entering the lab. They weren't the only ones who'd prepared for this moment. This evidence is already spreading across Earth's networks, Han told him. You can't stop it now. The truth is out. Kang's shoulders slumped in defeat. You don't understand what you've done. The other species, when they learn they've been lied to for millennia, they'll learn that humanity isn't just another primitive race to be uplifted by the Zentari, Minho said. They'll learn that we're the ones who built the first faster-than-light drives, who charted the first star maps. And they'll learn what the Zentari did to us, Hayan added. I suggest you contact your High Council, Ambassador. I believe we have some things to discuss about the future of galactic civilization. As Kang was escorted from the lab, Hayan turned back to the holographic display, still showing images of humanity's forgotten golden age. We're going to need bigger labs, she said softly. This is just the beginning. Above them, more research ships were arriving from Earth, ready to uncover the full truth of their species' lost heritage. The future they'd build might not match their ancient past, but at least now they knew who they really were, and what had been taken from them. The soft glow of multiple screens illuminated Professor Song Jaeho's face as she stared at the ancient symbols. Empty coffee cups littered her desk, testament to another sleepless night. For months, these mysterious markings had consumed her every waking moment. Now, finally, the pieces were falling into place. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, applying the latest translation algorithm. This time, something was different. The symbols began arranging themselves into clear patterns, forming words she could understand. Her hands trembled as she realized what she was seeing. Hyunwoo, she called out, her voice echoing through the quiet research facility. I need you here now. Nan Hyunwoo hurried in from the adjacent lab, his own research forgotten at the urgency in her voice. He found Jaehwa sitting motionless, staring at her screens with wide eyes. What is it? He asked, pulling up a chair beside her. Did you crack it? Look at this, she whispered, pointing to the translated text. It's a historical record, but not just any record. It's the truth about everything. About us. About why we forgot. The document described a vast human empire that had spanned thousands of worlds. Their technology had been far beyond anything currently known, even beyond the Zentari's capabilities. But something had gone terribly wrong. There was a war, Jaehwa explained, scrolling through the text, but not like anything we could imagine. They used weapons that could destroy entire star systems, weapons that could alter the fabric of space itself. Hyunwoo leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. Who were they fighting? That's just it, she replied. They were fighting themselves, different factions of humanity, each with the power to annihilate worlds. And in the end, the only way to stop the destruction was this. She pulled up another section of text, this one accompanied by detailed technical specifications, a last resort protocol. They called it the Great Return. Those who survived chose to abandon everything: their technology, their empire, even their memories. They chose to forget. Hyunwoo asked incredulously. They used machines to alter their own minds, their own genetics. They buried their knowledge so deep that it would take millennia to resurface naturally. Then they retreated to Earth, our ancestral home, to start over as primitive beings. But that wasn't the most shocking revelation. As HFY continued translating, she uncovered something even darker. The Zentari, far from being the ancient civilization they claimed to be, were opportunists who had discovered the abandoned human worlds. They found our empty cities, our dormant technology, she explained, anger creeping into her voice. They couldn't understand most of it, but they took what they could. They built their empire on our ruins, claimed our achievements as their own, and then presented themselves as saviors to other emerging species. Hyunwoo sat back, trying to process the implications. But why didn't they destroy all evidence of human civilization? Why leave anything that could expose their lie? They tried, HFY said, bringing up more translated documents. But our ancestors were thorough. They left hidden archives across the galaxy, protected by technology the Zentari couldn't overcome. They knew that someday, humanity would return to the stars. They wanted us to find the truth when we were ready. She stood up suddenly, gathering data crystals. We need to get this to the Council immediately. The Zentari aren't just frauds. They're grave robbers who built their power on our forgotten legacy. Wait. Hyunwoo caught her arm. Look at this section, about why our ancestors chose to forget. Maybe they had good reasons. Maybe this knowledge is dangerous. HFY paused, considering his words. We're not them, she said finally. We've grown differently this time, developed our technology more slowly, more carefully. We don't have to repeat their mistakes. She turned back to the screens, where more text was still being translated. Besides, there's something else here. Notes about technology they created but never used. Peaceful applications they never got to explore because the war consumed everything. Knowledge that could help us now, Hyunwoo realized. Exactly. Our ancestors left us more than just the truth about our past. They left us a chance to do better. She began copying the files to secure storage. The Zentari's lie is about to end. But that's just the beginning. The real question is, what do we do with our legacy now that we found it? Outside their lab, the sun was rising on another day. Soon, the truth would spread across Earth and beyond, shaking the foundations of the galaxy's power structure. But as HFY looked at the ancient words of her ancestors, she felt not just anger at what had been stolen, but hope for what could be rebuilt. This time, they would do it right. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed with polished marble and ancient metals, its curved walls rising hundreds of meters toward a transparent dome that revealed the star-filled space above. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in ascending rings, their eyes fixed on the central platform where Dr. Park stood, calm and composed. Ambassador Kang watched from his elevated position in the Zentari section, his scales shifting between colors of fear and rage. He had tried everything to prevent this moment, but the humans had outmaneuvered him at every turn. Distinguished members of the council, Dr. Park began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. For millennia, we have all lived under a lie. The Zentari Empire, which claims to be the origin of all advanced civilization, built their power on a foundation of deception. The chamber's holographic systems activated, filling the air with images from the excavation sites. Ancient human cities, preserved in vacuum, appeared above the assembled delegates. Technical readouts showed dating results that couldn't be disputed. These ruins predate the Zentari Empire by more than 150,000 years. Dr. Park continued. But more importantly, they prove something that changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history. She gestured, and new images appeared. DNA comparisons, linguistic analyses, and archaeological evidence from dozens of worlds. Humanity didn't evolve on Earth. We returned there, choosing to forget our own history to end a devastating conflict. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. A delegate from the Proxima Confederation stood. "These are serious claims, Dr. Park. What proof do you offer beyond ruins that could have been built by anyone?" "This," Dr. Park replied, producing a small device. When she activated it, a holographic figure appeared, a human from 200,000 years ago, speaking in a language that Professor Song had decoded. The translation appeared for all to read. "This is the final record of the human conclave," the ancient figure declared. "We choose exile over extinction, peace over power. To our descendants who find this message, learn from our mistakes. Build something better." Ambassador Kang surged to his feet. "This is fabrication. The Zentari Empire has guided civilization for 50,000 years. We brought order to chaos. You brought theft and lies," Dr. Park countered. She activated another recording, this one showing early Zentari ships discovering abandoned human cities. "Your own ancestors documented their finds, their excitement at claiming our technology as their own." The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates demanded answers. Species that had been uplifted by the Zentari realized that much of their given technology had been stolen from human ruins. Suddenly, every communication device in the chamber activated simultaneously. Reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Ancient installations, hidden beneath mountains and oceans on 100 worlds, were coming to life. "What's happening?" demanded the council president. "The truth is awakening," Dr. Park explained. "Our ancestors left safeguards, waiting for the day humanity would return to space. Now that we've reclaimed our history, these facilities recognize our presence." On screens throughout the chamber, more ancient sites activated. Libraries of lost knowledge opened their doors. Medical facilities powered up their healing systems. Research centers revealed technologies that even the Zentari had never discovered. "We don't come seeking revenge," Dr. Park assured the worried council. "Our ancestors left us a warning about the dangers of power and pride. We have no desire to repeat their mistakes." She turned to face Ambassador Kang. "The Zentari Empire ends today, but your people need not be our enemies. Help us build something new, something honest." Another delegate rose. "What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Park?" "A true galactic council," she replied. "Not built on lies and domination, but on cooperation and shared knowledge. The facilities awakening across the galaxy don't just belong to humanity. They belong to all species who wish to learn and grow together." More reports flooded in. The ancient human installations weren't weapons of war. They were centers of learning, healing, and scientific discovery. Their activation was releasing knowledge that had been lost for 200 millennia. Ambassador Kang slumped in his seat, knowing his empire's power was crumbling. But around him, other delegates were standing, voting to support humanity's proposal for a new galactic order. As the council chamber transformed from shock to excitement, Dr. Park smiled quietly to herself. The confrontation she had feared had instead become a beginning. Humanity had reclaimed its past not to dominate, but to share. The stars had welcomed them home. The exploration vessel, New Dawn, drifted silently through the asteroid field, its advanced sensors prodding the seemingly endless rocks for signs of ancient human activity. Captain Ryu Jinho stood on the bridge, watching as another massive chunk of space rock passed by their viewport. "Captain, we're picking up energy signatures," his science officer reported excitedly. "They match the patterns from the other outposts." Jinho nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. In the 3 months since the Galactic Council revelation, his crew had discovered 17 hidden human facilities. Each one contained wonders that reshaped their understanding of what was possible. "Take us in," he ordered. "Standard archaeological protocols." As they approached the asteroid, its surface suddenly rippled and disappeared, revealing a massive structure built into the rock itself. The crew gasped. This was larger than any facility they'd found before. "It's some kind of shipyard," the science officer announced, scanning the revealed structure. "Sir, there are vessels in there. Ancient human ships, perfectly preserved." On another part of the galaxy, Han So-young led a delegation of formerly subjugated species through an abandoned Zentari control center. The walls were covered with displays showing how the Zentari had deliberately suppressed technological advancement in other races. "They kept us dependent," she explained to the gathered representatives. "Every piece of technology they gave us was carefully controlled, designed to maintain their power." A Proximan delegate examined the records. They knew about medical treatments that could have saved millions of our people, but they withheld them to keep us reliant on their aid. Back on the New Dawn, Jin Ho's team had entered the ancient shipyard. The preserved vessels were unlike anything they'd ever seen. Sleek, powerful ships that seemed to defy the known laws of physics. "Captain," called his engineer, examining one of the ship's systems. "These engines, they don't just bend space. They work with it, almost like they're asking the universe to cooperate instead of forcing it." Jin Ho touched the hull of the nearest ship, feeling a subtle vibration. "They're still active," he realized. "After all this time, they were waiting for us." Across the galaxy, more revelations emerged. Han So-young's team discovered records of how the Zentari had actively sabotaged relations between emerging species, fostering conflicts they could then step in to solve. "They made us think we needed them," she told a gathering of freed worlds. "But look at how quickly we've advanced since learning the truth. In 3 months, we've achieved more progress than in centuries under their guidance." The Zentari Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. Without their technological advantages and with their deceptions exposed, their control over other species evaporated. Many Zentari worlds themselves were revolting. Younger generations horrified by the truth about their civilization. On the ancient shipyard, Jin Ho's crew made another stunning discovery. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we've found their library. It's not just technical data. It's their story. Why they chose to forget." The records told of a civilization that had reached incredible heights but had lost its way. They had the power to reshape worlds, but had forgotten the cost of using that power. Their final war hadn't been against an enemy. It had been against their own worst impulses. They could have ruled the galaxy, Jin Ho mused, reading through the records. Instead, they chose to start over, to grow again differently. A signal came in from Han So-young. Her face appeared on the bridge screen, excited. "Jin Ho, you need to see what we found." The Zentari didn't just suppress technology. They actively destroyed any signs of cooperation between species. They were terrified of what would happen if we learned to work together. Because together, we're stronger than they ever were, Jin Ho realized. Not just humans, all of us. Every species they tried to keep apart. The revolution wasn't happening with weapons or warfare. It was happening through understanding, through the sharing of knowledge and resources that the Zentari had hoarded for millennia. The ancient humans knew this would happen, Jin Ho told his crew, looking at the massive shipyard around them. "They left us all this technology, but they also left us their wisdom, their warning about the price of power without responsibility." As the New Dawn prepared to depart with its discoveries, Jin Ho took one last look at the facility. The ancient ships would fly again, but this time they would serve all species, not just one. The revolution wasn't about replacing one empire with another. It was about creating something entirely new. Something better. The Great Hall of the new Galactic Alliance headquarters floated in space, its transparent walls offering a view of thousands of ships from every known species. The structure itself was a marvel of cooperation, built using recovered human technology, but enhanced by the unique insights of a dozen different races. Kim Won-shik gazed out at the assembled fleet, remembering how different things had been just 1 year ago. The Zentari Empire's fall had left a void, but what filled it was something no one had expected. "Representative Kim," a voice called softly. He turned to see Dr. Shin Minji approaching with a delegation of scientists from various worlds. Their excited chatter echoed through the hall. "The latest test results are in," Minji announced, her eyes bright with excitement. "The combination of proximate energy theory with ancient human quantum mechanics works perfectly. We can now heal genetic damage across all known species." Wanshik smiled. This was exactly what their ancestors had hoped for, not just the recovery of lost knowledge, but its evolution through cooperation. The main chamber filled quickly as representatives from hundreds of worlds took their places. Unlike the old Galactic Council, here everyone sat at the same level. There was no hierarchy, no elevated positions of power. Wanshik stepped onto the central platform. The soft hum of translation devices filled the air as he began to speak. "1 year ago, we discovered a truth that shook the galaxy. Humanity's ancient past came to light, and with it, the lie that had kept us all divided. But today we gather not to dwell on past deceptions, but to celebrate what we've built together." Holographic displays activated around him, showing images from across known space. New cities rising on once dead worlds. Ships of hybrid design exploring the unknown regions. Schools where children of different species learned from each other. "Our ancestors' greatest mistake," he continued, "was believing they had to stand alone. Their power isolated them, led them down a path of destruction. We choose a different way." In her laboratory section of the station, Minji worked with a team that would have been impossible under the old order. A former Zentari scientist collaborated with a Proximan theoretical physicist, while an Earth-born engineer discussed subtle energy patterns with a being of pure light. "Look at this," the Zentari scientist called out, pointing to a display. "The patterns in your ancient medical technology match perfectly with our understanding of cellular reconstruction. Together, they solve problems neither of us could fix alone." Back in the main chamber, Wanshik gestured to the ships visible through the walls. "Every vessel out there carries the flags of multiple worlds. Every discovery we make is shared freely. Every challenge we face together." He paused, looking at the faces before him. Some human, some alien, all united in purpose. The stars welcome humanity home, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals. And in doing so, they welcomed all of us to a future greater than any single species could achieve. The chamber erupted in applause, 1,000 different ways of showing approval blending into one joyous sound. Among the delegates, even former Zentari representatives joined in, their scales showing colors of hope rather than pride. In orbit around distant suns, more ancient human facilities continued to awaken. But now they didn't answer to human signals alone. They recognized the combined signatures of all allied species, sharing their knowledge freely with any who came to learn. Minji's team had just made another breakthrough. The ancient humans weren't just advanced technologically, she explained to her colleagues. They understood things about the universe that we're only beginning to grasp. But together, we're not just recovering their knowledge, we're surpassing it. As the day's session ended, Wanshik stood with Minji, watching ships depart through the Alliance's new transportation network, another combination of recovered human technology and modern innovation. "Do you think they knew?" Minji asked softly. "Our ancestors, when they chose to forget everything and start over, do you think they knew it would end like this?" Wanshik thought about the messages they'd found, the careful way their ancestors had hidden their legacy. "I think they hoped," he replied. "They didn't just leave us their technology. They left us their wisdom, their mistakes, their dreams of what could be." A ship of new design passed before them. Its hull bore markings from Earth, Proxima, and the reformed Zentari worlds. It was heading out toward unexplored space, carrying a crew as diverse as the galaxy itself. This was their new beginning, not a restoration of humanity's ancient empire, but the birth of something far greater. A future where no species stood alone, where every voice was heard, where the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter on their shared journey forward. The age of empires was over. The age of alliance had begun.